If I start telling people about hell, I might just scare them off. Where are you going to scare them off to? Hell number 2? Or are you just going to sit there and let them burn?
Got Films is a full-service production company that provides motion picture quality content and production services for use in the film and TV industry. Looking for a seasoned crew, high-quality equipment, or other production services for your film, TV, commercial, corporate convention, sports, news, or interview project? Your search stops here. Some of our projects include NASCAR, American Restoration, Pawn Stars, Counting Cars, Top Chef, BattleBots, Forge and Fire, and Street Outlaws. We have also produced over 60 feature films and documentaries. We're ready for all your needs. Whatever your project, whatever your budget, big or small, Got Films got you. GotFilms.com.
This is Chris from Don't Let Them Burn. Welcome to the program. This is Amazing Machinations, where we expose evil plots. Don't forget to check me out on don'tletthemburn.com. And if you want to support this channel, you can also buy a t-shirt. We have The Best Is Yet to Come, God Save America, Truth Faces Rejection, and The Last Days, among other shirts that you can check out on our Teespring. You could also give us a monthly contribution through Locals or Patreon. To keep this program alive, we need your help. We can't do it without you. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share if you find value in this program. If you can't help us financially, liking and sharing also helps us a lot. Also, other than YouTube and Rumble, you can find me on Rockfin, BitChute, and other platforms. See my link tree for other examples. My physical address is also below and on my website. Finally, check out my social media channels, especially my Telegram channel, where I share news, documentaries, and other resources to enhance your knowledge base. You can also follow me on Twitter and similar platforms. Today, we get into some beats about technocracy in an industry that all of us are familiar with. All right, this is Amazing Machinations, episode 9. And if you don't know what a machination is, all it means is a evil plot. And today, I have a medical expert, one of my friends, and brother in Christ, Mr. Mick. Sometimes I call him Mickey Mouse. So we met about 2 years ago, something like that. And he'll make it clear for us in a second. And, you know, we've been growing our friendship. But at the same time, professionally, we know each other. And let's just put it this way. He's revealed some things to me that should interest you as far as this medical industry and where it's going. We're just going to talk about some of the wicked schemes, things that we can actually relate to. It's not just on the conspiracy bandwagon where everybody wants to point a finger at the medical industry because of the thing that happened over the last 3 years. Okay? So with all that, Mick, how are you doing?
Hiya, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be a brother in Christ with you, and I'm looking forward to telling you about a few things.
All right. So tell the audience a little bit about your experience. How long have you been a doctor?
So I'm 63 years old. That puts me at being a physician right out of medical school about 39 years. But I've done a couple of residencies. So part of that time was training. I'm board certified in OBGYN, and then after about 13 years of doing that, I decided to go back and do a second residency in emergency medicine. So I've been practicing that for most of the last 15 or so years. A few years recently have been in urgent care. I just really didn't want to keep doing all the nights anymore. And some of that most recent time has also been doing some primary care medicine. So I've mixed it up a little bit.
All right. So as far as I know, for your last tenure at where you were, we won't mention it, you weren't a Christian the whole time. So tell us about this journey you took within that industry. And one of our friends kind of helped you to see the light of Jesus Christ. We just want to cover this for the audience so they know that not everybody in the medical industry is, evil or just plotting to kill them. But, we also have believers and moral people inside of the industry. We let's just call them the good guys, the moral good guys. And tell us about your journey.
Yeah, there are a fair amount of good guys. Not always easy to tell who is who, even by me. Let's see where to start. Well, I was born Catholic. My parents were Catholic, and so I did the earlier sacraments of the Catholic Church. Never was quite comfortable, though, there. One of the things that bothered me significantly was the lack of reference and support for reading the Bible and using the Bible. It's not very commonly done in the Catholic Church, very, very little. And so I shied away from the Catholic Church after about 12, 14 years old, but had an interest still, and religiously that is, and decided to take a class in college called Hebrew Literature, of which we discussed the, mostly I guess it would be the Torah, the earlier books of the Bible. At that point in time, I believed Jesus was a real man on earth, and I believed that he had really gone through the crucifixion. But I wasn't saved at that time. I didn't ask him to be my savior. I didn't really have probably the guidance to know how to do that. So over time, I, still having what many people will use the term sort of a spiritual thought process, I was involved for a time in aspects of New Age, of Native American Indian, especially their concepts of the Great Spirit, and always had an interest in being morally correct, if you want to use those terms. So, in conjunction with that, I went to medical school, became a doc, and always tried to do the right things, but I had a problem with several of the thought processes that the medical community had with regards to treatment of patients, and also the more common trend over the past maybe 15, 20 years of the patient having more to say about their medical care and catering to more of the patient's requests than what was actually medically good for them. I always thought the patient should be a part of their care, a large part of their care, but I also felt that they should be not dictating the medical care. So as this situation was getting worse and was bothering me significantly, one particular thing that had happened was that I had found out after practicing OBGYN for about 13 years and then leaving and going into emergency medicine, I became aware that something called hormone replacement therapy that we had been practicing on menopausal women for years, suggesting that they take estrogen and progesterone, actually had a downside of increased risk of cancer with the progestins that we were using. There was some awareness of this, but had been downplayed, and we were actually telling patients that it was protecting their heart, that they were reducing their risk of heart disease. Years after I stopped OBGYN, I have found out definitively, and it's fairly easy to confirm in the literature, as well as when you look at the use of those hormones now, that there was no benefit with regards to reducing heart disease. And I believe that this was known early on when we were first suggesting this to women, and the OBGYNs had not been told the truth, and therefore we were not telling the truth to our patients. They've subsequently stopped using hormone replacement therapy for that reason, but that was eye-opening for me to find out that such a large scam had occurred. About that time, I decided to stop working nights as much as I could and started practicing more of a primary care medicine situation. This is now coming to about 4 to 5 years ago. And I met a mutual friend of ours who was also working where I was practicing primary care. we started talking from time to time about different concepts with regards to medicine and some of the things we were both concerned about in the realm of having to be careful interpreting what the present care was supposed to be for people, what was known as the standard of care. And then the past 3 years started. That got us into much more intense conversations, which eventually led to the spiritual side of things, and I was saved as a result of her explaining a lot of the events that are going on with regards to things that the New World Order type people are trying to do, the satanic side of that world. I became acutely aware that Satan really did exist, and as a result, and therefore that God really exists, Jesus really exists, and I became saved.
Great. So you got introduced to the Son of God for the second time, but this time you put your total trust in him. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what you're saying, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So there you go. It's a short journey for you guys to understand the background here. And so I did one show a while ago about, you know, the Obamacare and all this other stuff with another medical professional. And so we're going to go in another area here where Mick has other experiences. He's seen things come about, and he can explain it way better than I can, obviously, right? Because I am not a doctor. And like our pastor said, I don't play one on TV. All right. So, Mick, take us on another journey here. Where do we start?
Well, as a result of the past 3 years or so, I have started to really become very discerning before believing many of the common thought processes in medicine that are known as the standard of care. And they've actually relabeled many things. Satan is good at doing that, and the relabeling of that thought process in medicine is now something known as best practices. These are practices which are, in my opinion, often not well-based in science, but have the potential benefit for the larger institutions such as the pharmaceutical and insurance companies to benefit from the use of increased medications. The first time that I became aware of how controlled we really are and have been was only about a year or so ago, and I read an article that explained that back in the, I believe it's the 1930s, could be the 1940s, but around that time period, that a group of gentlemen who you might have heard of, Carnegie, Rockefellers, Morgan, they got involved in medicine. I cannot tell you all the things they thought. I can only tell you how they got involved, and it's well documented. They got involved by making donations to the medical schools of those times in, what's the right word, and therefore securing themselves by making those donations, by having a person sit on the board of directors for the medical school. In other words, if the medical school accepted the donation, they had to put someone on the medical board. So that's when I believe modern medical schools started to become heavily influenced by the business world of this country. I do not know all of the connections with regards to the pharmaceuticals, but there are connections with these larger men, business-wise that is, with pharmaceutical companies over time. And there started to be significant changes in the way medicine was practiced back then. A lot of more things that we might call more holistic approaches to medicine, which had been involving other types of medicine, other meaning other than taking a pill for everything, had been used to help people back in those times. Granted, they didn't have the technology that we now have in terms of CAT scans and MRIs and different types of drugs, but they did have other things that were helpful to people. Many of those things were actually pushed out of this country and down into Mexico, and there were campaigns with people in governmental positions with regards to health departments at high levels, which persecuted many of these practitioners until they did leave the country. And in place of those, the attitude of the medical student became, for the most part, if there's a disease, we probably have a pill for it, and that's what you should be using to treat those diseases. Now, there are many wonderful medications, without a doubt, and the Lord is good, and He puts many things, I believe, into the hands of men to help heal people. But there are also men who are looking to gain personally from this, and I think that's the trend we have been on for many years. Are you interested in an example or two, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. I'm here writing a note because what we find with all of these pharmaceutical drugs all over the place and the epidemics that are going on with opiates and whatnot, every time, or most of the time, I should say every time, most of the time you go into a doctor's office, they give you these prescriptions, and we know that there's kickbacks and whatnot, so they have a financial thing to gain there. And what I keep hearing is there's no nutritional training. They're like 10% nutrition and the rest is whatever. Can you explain some of that for us before you get into your other examples?
Sure. So I went to a school called St. George's, St. George's University of Medicine. It's based in Grenada. So when I went to college, I didn't have a very good first year. And I actually repeated most of my first semester. First time out of my parents' house, didn't quite have the self-control, and ended up just not performing well. So I got serious, thank the Lord, within the next year, and continued college, did well. Made the dean's list, as a matter of fact, and I only mention that because even though I did that well, still, at that time, getting into medical school was so competitive that I wasn't even a candidate to get into one of the American schools. So I went to St. George's, and St. George's, we did our first 2 years of training outside of the country, but then there was a connection such that we could do our second 2 years, which is the clinical years, back in hospitals in the United States or in England. The reason I mentioned it is because the English system, which we were a little bit more based off of, did have a better approach to nutrition, and I actually had a full semester of nutrition at my medical school. But that was not being taught at the American medical schools. I do not know if they are now teaching it, but I can tell you that's factual because most of my professors were American medical school American medical school professors who didn't like the medical school system anymore in the United States. So they came down to the island of Grenada and enjoyed the tropics and at the same time continued their teaching. So that much I can tell you. And nutrition, I don't hear much on the lips of many of the medical students of which I've had the pleasure of teaching. In my middle of my career, I was at a teaching hospital. I was a visiting professor for two of the medical schools, one in this country, and one and St. George's. So I don't think their nutritional education is very much at all. Most of the people I know that are interested in supplements and vitamin and mineral type nutrition, improving the foods, are older docs who have subsequently, like myself, come to realize the true importance of that.
Absolutely. And being a diabetic, most of my listeners I don't really talk about my health, but I'm a diabetic, and the things I were told back in the 80s, some of it was good. I spoke to dietitians and whatnot, but they had this basic thing with the North American diet. They even told me to drink skim milk, which now we know is worse for you than regular milk.
Correct.
Right? And regular milk, for those that don't know, has about 12 grams of sugar in it. And so the information that's coming out today tells that a diabetic can eat fruits as long as they don't have insulin resistance and a bunch of other things. I don't want to turn this into the diabetic program, but it's just fascinating to me. The research that's over 100 years old is just coming out over the last 10, 20 years.
That's just an example of what I was saying. They started changing things back, it's getting to be about 100 years now. Everything, the focus is on getting people to take medications. I recently met in my one of my jobs that I do, I recently met 2 people within the past month whom, when I asked them about their idea for losing weight, who were type 2 diabetics, they said they had no idea they were supposed to lose weight. They had no idea that weight had anything to do, that their providers, their medical providers, had not mentioned a word about weight loss and diet to them with regards to type 2 diabetes, only taking pills.
Wow. And then we have the situation where a lot of these medications are through the roof when it comes to the price, especially if it works better for you. The faster acting insulin, they can go from $50 to $500. And most people obviously cannot afford that. And then you have, it's sort of like the system that they're building now with the genetic manipulation, where if you are going to adopt the technology of AI and wearables and things going into your body, which, that could be debated about accepting or not accepting it. Pretty much the elites have the first choice. They can afford everything, no matter the cost, right? And so the plebs, or the lower tiered citizen, will be put on a universal basic income. So with that, they won't be able to afford the care that a lot of these technologies will give you. I mean, there's bad to it and there's good to it. So we're not trying to just demonize technology, but there are things there that could actually, get paraplegics to walk again and whatnot.
No, that all fits the not therapy. What was the word I wanted? That it all fits the theory that we're discussing. That this is about money, and whomever is able to pay will have the ability to acquire in terms of gene insertions or the things Elon Musk has been doing with the brain insertions, all that type of thing. It's going to be they're doing this to improve their income, and there's not a lot of benevolence in it. And that's what medicine was supposed to be to begin with.
Absolutely. And just for a little side note, if you don't know what transhumanism is, you want to go check out 2045.com. Go to the diagram on the right of the website. It has a human body there, an avatar, and it tells you their plan from 2015 to 2030, which those plans have kind of changed, but it's all about these biological inserts, BCI. I forgot what the term means, but BCI. Go ahead.
Brain-computer interface.
Yes, brain-computer interface, which I'm actually against this stuff, but
so am I.
Let's just say there are going to be so many advantages. It's beyond the scope of the average person's imagination. So I just want to...
And financial ability.
Absolutely.
Big separation in classes.
Yes, and then like we said, transhumanism, also known as Human 2.0 and other names, it's where mankind is taking a quote-unquote evolutionary step. I don't believe in evolution, and Mick doesn't either.
I do not.
And
biblical.
It's where you're taking a kind of a gain of function, okay?
Yes.
This large evolutionary step to become more godlike. I know that sounds crazy, but you can go check it out for yourself.
Only in their minds, but
right,
yes.
In their minds, yes. And so we also have Christian transhumanists, and this is not the transhumanism show, but we just have to touch this because everything we're explaining tonight actually goes towards this concept.
The theme is consistent throughout. The theme is definitely consistent throughout.
Yeah. So with BCIs, you will be able to transfer your, what they say, consciousness. We could just say consciousness, the soul, all right, to a hologram, to a clone without a spirit in it, clearly, an avatar, a robot, and did I say hologram? A hologram?
Yeah, you said hologram.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So these what, 4 or 5 things there, they're ramping this up, and it's all connected to the universal basic income, to your home, your smart home, and all these things. It's just a massive category to talk about. You have to break it down in different segments to make it more pliable for people. But that's the basic concept.
All the themes, though, fit together.
Yes.
Which is the scary side of it, also hating to give them credit, but the brilliant side of it. But one of the concepts regarding all of this, which is not really in my realm, but I think it's a pretty straightforward concept, and that is that, like a telephone, which we use all the time, if you can receive the information, if you can give if you can talk on the phone to your friend on the other side, they can talk back to you.
Right.
In other words, whatever is implanted or improved in you, that such that you as a receiver of this technology think that you're benefiting from, which is what they highlight, will also, should and is expected to also easily control you.
Right.
Because they will never, I do not believe, they will never give you an autonomous gift
Right.
of these things.
Yes. Yeah, and this dovetails into the mark of the beast. We're not going to go there today, but it dovetails into that concept. And they always give you the benefits and never the cons, right? And you see this with a lot of things regarding technology and medicine and whatnot. They always give you the benefits. They're actually forced to give you the cons, like in the these commercials. Hey, well, we have this thing that will take care of your psoriasis, but hey, it might cause bleeding from the eyes. You might get rectal dysfunction. You might have suicidal thoughts. And
all of the side effects they have to mention, but they always mention with a smile and with a pretty or soothing voice.
Yeah. So we might come back to the transhumanism topic, but you had some examples you wanted to give earlier.
Yeah, one of the ones that really bothers me, and again, I have several jobs at this point in time, seeing patients in different realms, and one of them is evaluating people in their homes and having an awareness of the different medications they're taking. I do not honestly remember exactly how I put the following information together. It started out with my mother-in-law, I remember, who was taking a statin medication. That's a medication that's supposed to lower cholesterol. And she was having complaints, significant muscle complaints. So for the first time, I started looking into it. And this was probably 15 years ago. So I was not truly aware of what the medical communities, I shouldn't say community, the medical establishment, those that were in control. I was not quite aware of what they were up to at that point in time. But I was shocked to find that there were so many problems with the statins, which were permanent problems, even if you stopped the medication, mainly being muscle type aches and problems. I was surprised that these weren't highlighted. So I took my mother-in-law off the medication. Over time, I've started to learn more on a number of levels, and I came to find out that, in fact, coronary artery disease, which is the reason people are taking the statins. Mm-hmm. People are taking the statins to lower their blood lipids, to lower their cholesterol levels. And the statins do lower the cholesterol levels a small amount, maybe 20, 25 points. Mm-hmm. The point is, the research is not there to support lowering cholesterol will reduce your risk of heart disease. There's just an article, again, I read Well, actually, the article's maybe a decade old, but I was only recently became aware of it. Which it was done in Scandinavia, and it clearly shows that there is no relationship between lowering your cholesterol and reducing your risk of heart disease. The story goes that because you're lowering the cholesterol levels, you're reducing the risk of cholesterol building up on the inside lining of the blood vessels. It is true, cholesterol does build up on the inside lining of the blood vessels when the blood vessels have been damaged, but they are not being damaged by the cholesterol. So the cholesterol is not aggressive. The cholesterol is being used to some degree as a bandage by the body to heal over areas which are damaged by something that most people might have some awareness of, which are free radicals, things which are related to foods and preservatives and radiation. They bounce around in our body. They are free electrons that come off of certain chemicals. And as a result of them bouncing around in the body, and bouncing is the way I sort of visualize it, they damage what they hit. The cholesterol's job is to come and patch up those areas. If you have persistent and repetitive damage to the blood vessels, you'll have persistent cholesterol patches, they call them plaques, building up on the inside lining of the blood vessels. And it is true that the cholesterol does eventually build up enough that it can cause blockage of the blood vessel. But the cholesterol is not aggressive. So whether your cholesterol level is 200 or 250, there's no proof that reducing that cholesterol level reduces the amount of cholesterol that will build up in your blood vessels. Right. How do you reduce your risk of heart disease? You reduce the free radicals that are bouncing around in your body. And most people are aware that we are to take antioxidants to do that. The antioxidants help to repair and help to control these free radicals. So the statins are not doing what they're really people are being told they're doing, which is reducing heart disease. That is the benefit, not lowering your cholesterol.
So, Dr. Esselstyn, I think that's how you say his name, he's into heart surgery and whatnot, and he talks about the endothelial cells and how the oils can damage them, and it's like a fence, and when it breaks, free radicals or whatnot. But the cure, whatever, the treatment for that is eating a lot of vegetables.
Yes, there's two sides. One is to reduce your exposure to the free radicals, agreed, 100%, which is much better diet. And the other is, since we are exposed to other things that cause this problem outside of food, as many antioxidants as is comfortable to take to bind them up and reduce the damage. Yes, both things. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So there's a short little lesson for you guys. But, I mean, it all makes sense when you start going back, and how I remember Dr. Stan Monteith, I believe, I can't remember what he was. Was he a brain surgeon or something? It was one of those high medical professions. Anyhow, he passed of cancer, but he was talking about how the industry, one of the problems is so many good journals are written about, say, cholesterol or whatnot.
Yes, sir.
But a lot of professionals not reading the journals.
No, we're fed. We are fed what they want us to know, and we're encouraged to pay attention to what they want us to know and use by having representatives from the companies come in to see us all the time, excuse me, and drop off little gifts or make little offers or come to our dinner. We're going to have a speaker who is, they say, who is going to inform you, I say now is going to brainwash you into using the medications that they think they are, and you'll have a nice dinner out at a particular restaurant, and this is the way it's done. Now, the other side of that, if I could just finish up 1 second. So there are, I think I have my numbers correct, it's about 160, it's about 164,000 people who are over 40 years old now. And 162,000 in the United States, 162,000 who are under, if I have my numbers correct. The point is, if you go with my number for a moment, the 164, which is a number that I just looked up about maybe 2-3 months ago, they want pretty much everyone, they meaning the medical establishment, which includes the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies, they want everyone on these statins, everyone. And If, in fact, they're successful at doing that. Average price of a statin pill a day is about $9. If you do the math, it comes out to the fact that they're making billions of dollars a day if they get all of those people on a statin. And they want them all on a statin. It has nothing to do with whether you have a history of heart disease or have had a heart attack before or have an abnormal CAT scan that shows that you do or don't have calcium buildup in your blood vessels, of which part of the plaque, which includes cholesterol, also includes calcium.
Yeah.
They want them all on there. So there's enormous amount of money to make, and therefore this enormous lack of truth is worth all of their effort.
Yes.
And as I alluded to before, I just wanted to make mention that one of the articles that I just found the other day from one of the larger universities makes it very clear that the public should be up to speed on understanding the damage to the endothelial cells that you referred to and that I'm referring to with the free radicals. So the public should be well aware of, or the information is out there for the public to become aware of. But that's not the story that's being pushed. That's not where the money is being put in terms of advertising.
So we're going back to the book Behold the Pale Horse was talking about basically misinformation, disinformation, and those are the terms that are flying around today, used in an improper term to demonize anything that is truth.
Absolutely. And anything that is, especially anything that is truth, which will not make them money or help them gain control. And then we can get into the whole topic, which I do not know if you want to, of the possible intentional harm that
The jab?
I believe that no, not so much the jab itself, but just in general.
Okay.
These many more medications are harmful to people than just the jab.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And as you know, and you pointed out, so the at least three prongs are harm is being done by getting people to take medications they don't need on a number of levels. Then the money that's made is just ridiculous to promote this. On top of which, promoting science, telling stories which are just blatantly not true. And I gave you an example of one before with the hormone replacement therapy back, at least almost 30 years ago, which they now even admit was a lie. And they had the information to tell the truth back then, but didn't tell anyone.
Right.
So there are multiple schemes going on.
Yeah,
that
sure.
way.
I'd like
I
to
just
talk
mentioned
about
one.
Yeah, definitely. One thing, I hope I didn't lose my train of thought here. We were talking about, we have the SSRIs. I'm not sure how much you know about those, but those are found in these perpetrators of school massacres. A lot of them are on SSRI.
I wasn't aware of that. I'm not surprised, but I wasn't aware of that.
Okay, all right. So I don't know if you want to touch it a little bit or you want to go to another topic. If you're not ready, then
I don't know much about the psychological and medical backgrounds of many of the school perpetrators. I am not surprised to hear what you say. I will tell you that it brings us into the bigger topic. Again, we don't have to really talk about, but just that as to how psychological health is treated in this society. It is very much delegated to, again, medication.
Yeah.
It is the stresses that are put on this society, and then the delegation of the care, the treatment, doesn't involve counseling. It doesn't involve religious Christian teaching. It doesn't involve the principles of the Bible. It involves medication. Yeah. Give them medication, sometimes 2 and 3 and 4 different medications. So I'm not surprised that it would not be even more than just the SSRIs that are causing harm.
Yeah, and they are, I don't want to call them theories, evidence. I would call, so one is very hard to believe, but when you look into the background of places like DARPA or whatnot, then it gets easier to believe that some of these people that did these massacres actually had a brain chip. And of course, they were clinically insane. So yes. We have three things.
Well, clinically insane, which I might consider demonically possessed, or at least demonically oppressed, or yes.
Yeah, so we'll probably have to do a little bit more research into that aspect and then come back on another conversation. But okay, so one thing we noticed over the last 3 years, the information about the Big Pharma is that they were losing billions and billions of dollars before the whole planned fiasco that we all went through. And they're pretty much going bankrupt, and not just the American companies. Most of them are going bankrupt, and one of the reasons, like say Purdue Pharma, they were the biggest distributors of OxyContin, the opiate, and people have been finding remedies to these. When I say remedy, I mean a way to get off the opiate drugs.
I have a comment if you're interested.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've, again, doing the jobs that I've been doing, I've been going to people's homes as part of my job and reviewing their medications with them. Mm-hmm. I've met multiple people. At least, I probably see maybe about 10 people a day, and I've met, probably about 10 people, excuse me, Chris, sorry, who literally finally just decided to stop. That's it. They decided to stop the medication. Medication, I'm referring to opioids. They decided to stop. They found other ways spiritually, some with the Bible, some just pure determination. Certainly, I would submit to you that God was probably involved in all of them, and they just stopped. They literally stopped. Part of it's very hard to get out of that cycle.
Yeah.
And what I'd wanted to say to you is, is that what I find interesting about the whole opioid thing is that the public is being told that we are in a crisis, that so many people are addicted to the opioids, that doctors or the system is partly to blame because of poor prescribing and poor prescribing habits and not prescribing carefully or sensibly. Yet, I just was notified by the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, that they are no longer requiring, I'm pretty sure it's federal, certainly it involves at least the state we're in, which is Nevada, but I'm pretty sure it's federal, that they are no longer requiring special training to be able to prescribe the higher level narcotics. So we used to have to get our DEA number, and then we have to take a course, depending on whether you were a doctor or a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner, anywhere between an 8-hour to 16-hour course, and in order to be able to prescribe the medications which we use to help try to get people off methadone or it's the other one I want begins with a B. The word escapes me at the moment. It'll come to me in a minute. But anyway, point being is we used to have to take a course and get a special designation. They've now done away with the designation, and anyone with a DEA number is allowed to write the medication. So on one hand, they've made it much easier to write the high-level narcotics. On the other hand, they're telling the public, medical community is being frivolous with how they're using it.
Wow. So, misinformed.
Buprenorphine. Excuse me, that's it.
Buprenorphine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Buprenorphine.
So the public is being misinformed.
They're being told half the story.
Yeah.
I would consider that misinformed.
Right. And so I'm not sure how much you're aware of this part. I'm thinking that you more than likely are. How we've been prescribing so many, antibiotics?
Yes.
That they're not working as good as they should because our systems are getting so adapted to it. Is that the case?
It's not quite our systems to the best of our knowledge, but yes. So the back again, trying to give us a general historical idea.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on the exact dates, but back when penicillin was first derived and discovered, its effects on bacteria from the fungi, back in I think it was the 1930s. Penicillin was effective at killing something in the range of 80 to 90% of the bacteria known at that time to cause infections in humans. A very large amount. Over time, the bacteria get resistance. It's not so much our bodies get resistance, but the bacteria get resistance.
Okay.
Their lifespan, the lifespan of some bacteria is maybe 8 to 10 hours. So that and they can have spontaneous mutations as they go from one generation to the next generation. So in a matter of our lifetime, count up however many 8 hours there are in somebody who's, say, 80 years old, that's how many times the bacteria have actually lived and had changes in their, potentially had changes in their chromosomes by their reproduction, and therefore the change in their susceptibility and resistance to different chemicals. So there's an enormous amount of change in their, potentially in their lifetime, or over time versus ours. So that's why we see that bacteria can pretty quickly learn how to not be affected by the antibiotics we use, which is why we keep coming up with new ones, and which is why what you're alluding to is that we should be very judicious in using antibiotics. Yes. And it's gotten to be a serious, serious problem. So when I got a job working in one of the urgent cares here in town, the overall manager of the company was a physician, and he wanted me to be very strict about antibiotic use. And I agreed with that. Problem is that unfortunately the general community of people think that antibiotics are good for many, many things that they are not. And the way our society has changed, which I alluded to earlier in the interview, in that people have become demanding about what medical care they're going to get and not get, they've come in demanding antibiotics in situations where they're not effective, mostly because antibiotics do not help viruses, and most of the upper respiratory illnesses that people have are viral. So that has promoted this interest in making people happy, Yelp and all those different things. Making people happy when they get good reviews, people are giving out antibiotics, or the providers want to keep their jobs because they don't want complaints about them, because the providers are being judged on patient satisfaction. So antibiotics have been given out way more than they should be, and we're in a situation, they've been talking about it for years, where you're alluding to something which is commonly called superbugs. Bugs just being the word referring to a simple way or a funny way of referring to bacteria. We've had super bacteria which we essentially can't kill. And when they get going on infections with some people, they die. Yeah. And now we all carry around our own, generally speaking, our own bacteria. Yeah. And that's where the system comment comes in. So if you've been carrying around your bacteria for most of your life, and you've been taking antibiotics way more often than you should be taking them, the bacteria in your system are not as likely to respond well. And certain people are much more prone to dying from super infections, which we can't kill with the antibiotics available to us.
Wow. And so I'm going to jump from there to how foreign countries, mainly China, have been the ones producing our medications. And if they were to stop or introduce things that shouldn't be there, we would be in deep trouble as a nation, since so many people are medicated with these things. The fact that there's so many diseases, the long list of diseases and all these things, with our industry pretty much beholden to a foreign country. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, Chris, I have thoughts on it. It's probably more of a political thought process, which is not really my realm. But there are a few other scenarios that I didn't mention that I am absolutely convinced and can easily point out to you where the quote-unquote best practices, which are nothing more than rules that the people in higher places make up to pass down to the providers to get them to use more medications in most cases. Those best practices are set up to get us to use more and more medications, and as far as them being made in other places, I just think that it's another way for the medical community and the medical establishment to manipulate us into what we can do and can't do, stating that, oh, China's had this problem and therefore they can't make this one medication anymore, so now they've got to make a new medication, and the new medication's $10 more than the old medication. And anytime it's like what's happened with our Treasury in the United States. Anytime anybody else controls the manufacturer of something for this country, they can manipulate it any way they want. Was that the main point that you were wondering about?
Yeah, I mean, there's more I'm thinking about, but
I'm sure there's more.
That could
I
be,
could speculate, but
yeah.
That's how probably the doctor would be affected. The medical provider would be affected. And it's happened to us many times. It's baffling that all of a sudden we run out of rabies vaccine. All of us, these are the ones I remember off the top of my head. All of a sudden we run out of a certain antibiotic. All of a sudden we run out of that's commonly used. All of a sudden we run out of these things, and I can't understand how manufacturers who have been manufacturing these things for years suddenly run out of them. But I think it's when they want to make changes and manipulate our system a different way into different medicines.
Yeah.
By the way, those statins that I mentioned to you, they've now come out with a new type of cholesterol-lowering medication that's now injectable. And there are several of them, and I would absolutely stay away from those.
Yeah.
Remember what I told you to begin with. Lowering your cholesterol is not going to lower your risk of heart disease.
Right.
So stay away from them. The jig is up, so to speak. I think that enough people are out there talking about how bad the statins are causing trouble, and there's enough people who are aware that the actual damage to the inside of the blood vessels, as we mentioned before, the heart blood vessels in particular, are not coming from high cholesterol levels. Cholesterol's involved in the process, but it's not high aggressive cholesterol.
Yeah.
So they're now changing gears as they usually do.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, most of us, we want to trust our doctors,
Oh, absolutely. I became a doctor because I had so much respect for the profession.
Yeah, and of course doctors want to take care of people, and so we have this idea in our mind, what my doctor says is golden, but nowadays you have to get 2 or 3 opinions instead of going for that surgery, or instead of taking this medication, or whatever it is. That's just and right before you go there, I'm just tired of seeing, especially in our area of the world here in Nevada, people are being treated like just a number. Get you in and get you out. Get you in and get you out. It's just like you're not human.
Well, so if I could speak to that for a second.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that your observations are incorrect, but unfortunately I cannot, because they're not incorrect. So how did they start getting more control over what doctors do? And what happened, this isn't the other caveat that I was looking to speak to you about. So back when I first started in practice in the 1990s, early 1990s, most of the doctors I know were in private practice, maybe 95%. There was a small number who were working for universities, university hospitals. They were doctors that had those kinds of jobs, but that was about it. Then came the HMOs, what we called HMOs back then, the companies that were insurance companies who came with a new model. The old model used to be, back pre-1990 approximately, was that when someone had health insurance, the costs were reported to the costs that the doctor had for whatever procedure, surgery, or office visit were given to the patient. The patient submitted it to their insurance. The insurance companies, most of them paid about 80% of the cost, and the patient paid the other 20%, and that's how business was done. Then the HMOs came and basically said, we're going to go to big companies, Targets and Hewlett-Packard and any big companies, not picking on them, didn't mention them with any negative connotation, just companies I could think of at the moment. And they offered cheaper insurance. The deal was, you have to tell your employees, if they are on our insurance, they'll pay less, but we're going to limit it to the doctors who are willing to go on our plan. And the doctors who are willing to go on our plan are willing to take less money than what has been the standard of that time period, because we're going to guarantee them a bulk of patients. So this was very attractive to the younger doctors like myself at that time, because we were trying to start out, we were in competition with the older doctors, we were trying to build a patient base. So a company comes around like United Healthcare, and again, not picking on them, just mentioning a name, and they would say, okay, well, here's your contract. We have this many different companies who have employees. They're now going to have your name on a list, and they're now going to be limited to seeing you unless they want to go out of network and pay a full price. So this is how they got doctors to start thinking in terms of being in sort of a group. It's the first step in getting a hold of the system and having some control. Multiple companies came out at the same time, U.S. healthcare. And what then the next thing that happened, the next situation was people are now employees, have insurance, and in 1 year, the company would use United Healthcare. The next year, U.S. Another company, Cigna, some other company, would come around and say, hey, we're going to offer you $10 cheaper or $100 cheaper per person, switch to us. So then you had patients starting to go around like a merry-go-round. Oh, sorry, you're Dr. Kane, you're on my insurance this year, but you're not on it for next year, so we're going to switch away from you. They had to pay copays, but we're going to switch away from you. So instead of being willing to pay the whole price, they only knew they had to pay a copay, and they started bouncing around. This got people out of the habit, I believe, of having one set doctor at a time. So they're always preparing people for the next step. So after this system works for a few years, they come to the doctors and they said, they meaning hospitals, and I believe the bigger establishment was involved, insurance companies, the pharmaceuticals, the politician, they started coming around with, you know, docs, the world's getting complicated. And submitting to all these insurance companies is time-consuming, and it's difficult to get paid because they would refuse things. They had a lot of rules about what they would pay and what they wouldn't pay. You had a lot of codes you had to put in correctly. Why don't you let us do your billing, and you just practice the medicine? So we'll hire for your office, your staff. We'll rent your office space. We'll do your billing, and we'll pay you a percentage, and don't worry about this anymore. So they made the world complicated for the docs, and many of the doctors gave in to this. That was the beginning of the end for the autonomy of the physicians as we now know it. Yeah. And now what happens is, over time, now we're the opposite. Now about 95% of doctors are under the control of some corporation, either through a hospital or directly. And then comes a situation like the last 3 years, where doctors are forced to make a decision, even if they don't agree with certain aspects of what was purported over the past 3 years with our pandemic. Am I going to give up my salary, or am I going to follow the rules? And that's where a lot of what you mentioned earlier comes into play. Many of the docs, unfortunately, have said, I'm not giving up my salary. I'm going to try to walk the tightrope between caring for the patients and not losing my salary. Well, now we're to the point with the insurance companies where they will come around, especially the Medicare side of it. They will come around and they will set guidelines for physicians. Every patient has to be on certain medications. Every patient has to be having certain screening tests done. Patients with certain diagnoses have to have certain questions answered every visit. And I'm not saying these are all necessarily bad, but the point is it's no longer up to the discretion of the physician, and they turn out to control the medicine completely. Yeah. So you have the docs who are no longer controlling, or the nurse practitioners or the physician's assistants who are no longer controlling, and they've given up. They've just given up. Now, that may sound like I'm making an excuse for the medical care providers. I'm not. Many of them just don't have a conscience. They're just not looking out for the patient's best interest. Yeah. But that is part of what is going on, and a large part of what's going on. Did that make sense?
Yes, it did. I'm writing down so many notes here.
So your doctor doesn't have a choice in many of the things he or she suggests to you. If they don't show it in the chart and don't make an attempt, they will literally lose some kind of credit points towards future salary, or the company may totally lose the insurance coverage and lose all those patients, which they control. It's a monopoly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, one other little caveat, just to give people a sense of this. So let's say you have a patient who's of age and should get a mammogram. The patient says, I don't want a mammogram. I don't want the radiation exposure, for example. Even though the provider documents in the chart that they talked to the patient, explained the pros and cons, and insisted that this is the proper thing for them. If the patient says no, guess who gets dinged for that? Guess who loses credit points?
The doctor.
The doctor. How does that make any sense?
No.
But that is the system now.
Yeah.
So it encourages the provider to push almost unrealistically for certain things and not for other things. That is the real world of what's going on with most all of these insurance companies and most all of the pressures that the physicians are running into, which is why you see an enormous number of physicians and other people leaving medicine.
Right.
And then this last 3 years was the icing on the cake for many of them. It was just the last straw.
Yeah.
Shouldn't really say the icing on the cake, poor analogy. The last straw
Right.
to make a lot of them either give up fighting and or give up medicine.
Yeah. I'm seeing the exodus that you're talking about, whether it's law enforcement.
And yes, you're right. Teachers, law enforcement, military, medicine. Those are the ones they've gone after strongly and kind of in the forefront of all this, I think.
And if that continues, the system I see being built is federalizing everything. Pretty bringing in fascism, you know.
Yes. Well, guess who's being left behind in all those professions? Guess what thought processes and what possible ideologies and political thoughts and everything else, guess what comes first in their lives? Is law enforcement really coming first, or are their politics coming first? Is medicine really coming first, or is their politics coming first?
Yeah.
That's who's being left behind in those positions.
Yes. Okay, so we have this whole
As a group, not completely by any means. I'm not trashing any particular.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because I got some things here I'm going to express in a minute. But everyone talks about the specter of communism over America, and it's there, right?
Without a doubt.
However, there's something above that. They're just using this communist, socialist, DEI, ESG, whatever you want to call it, as a proxy, right? And some people are probably wondering, what do you mean it's a proxy? All right. I talk about this thing called technocracy a lot. That's the higher system, the penultimate, if you want to call it that, of what they're really trying to bring in. And when I say they, I mean the elites, but it's not just the elites, okay? It's a scientific dictatorship where they use bureaucrats, scientists, and one other group, engineers, to control the whole system. And the system has been trying to be built since the 1920s. It went away, then it came back, and now we're kind of seeing it globally. And so we yes, the communism is there, the socialism is there, but look at it as a proxy for something bigger. I really have to get you to hone in on that, even when it comes to the medical and all this stuff, right? Because what I'm about to explain is going to lead right into what I'm talking about right now, right? So
yes.
You talked about autonomy. Autonomy is being human, right?
Yes.
Independence is being human,
yes.
Right? And just like, you know, you have Democrats, Republicans, and independents, right?
Correct.
The independents aren't just centrists. A lot of independents are patriots, and they're conservatives.
Yes.
Conservatives.
Yes.
Right?
And therefore, what your point is, they're not really ambivalent just because they're not picking one side or the other side.
Yeah.
They have values. They have values and a value system.
Yes. And so, Democrat system is collectivism. The Republican system is collectivism. We all gather together in this thing, and whether it's bad or good, we vote that way, right?
Yes, unfortunately.
And the two-party system came over from Europe, but that's another historical conversation. And so we have collectivism being brought on by many different flashpoints in society, especially over the last, since 2014-ish. Then when Trump got into office, we got divided more, and not because of Trump, but because of what the political system and the media did, right? And it's continued to do, right?
Yes.
And so from there, when it goes coming back to medical, we have the satanic, I call it satanic because I believe that's what it is. One of the leaders in this organization is a former communist. Not former, he is, but he did some other things. Anyway, the World Health Organization. World Health. They want to control your health, right?
Without a doubt.
And so what that brings us to, and what you're also talking about, is a medical hive mind.
Absolutely.
All of us have to think the same, react the same, and go along with the program. And even the people that are in the field, they are a product until they die, right?
Unless you refuse.
Unless you refuse. Oh, wake up is another term for it.
Wake up, right? Refuse. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And so what this is all leading us to, and this could be another program as well, is the shifting towards an AI-controlled society, but first the system. AI is taking over the medical system faster than most people think. I know you got a lot of thoughts, so let's move.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. First of all, just make a quick comment. So you have a little understanding of who I am. So when the past 3 years started, I was working at a institution which was a, I guess you would call it a government institution, right? It is a governmental institution.
Yes.
And it was a corrections facility. I can say that probably.
Yeah.
And so what happens is they decided to institute a system early on in that process where when I punched into work, I had to make comment about my personal medical care and whether I had received a certain, not quite mandated, but highly suggested and hard pushed injection in my body, and I refused. I explained that that was my personal medical care, that was against the HIPAA laws, and that I would not tell them every time I punched in that was the case. We went back and forth for about a week, and after a week, I said I would sign in because they now changed the time clock so that it was impossible for me to literally report to work unless I answered their questions. So after a week and a half of going back and forth, I finally resigned. I told them I refused to do it. Interestingly enough, what I was told by my superior at that point in time was that that person admired my sticking to my values, but then said goodbye. And I was out of work as a physician for a year and a half. Should I tell them what I was doing?
Sure.
Yeah, I spent my time working as a ranch hand because I could not get back into the system because I refused what was required, by most all of the jobs now. They're all connected. All of the insurance companies, all of the pharmaceutical companies, all these big companies that give health, they're all connected. And they all immediately jumped to everyone has to be allow themselves to be given a certain injection or you can't work. So unfortunately, the financial hit that I took was I'm only mentioning it so people understand that when you don't have the majority of people saying no to that point, this system appears as though it is winning. I don't believe in the long run they're going to win. I'm Christian, and I certainly believe I know who's winning. But in the short run in this world, they are progressing exactly as you said, Chris. And that's the only way that we will get back to where we were. Otherwise, I believe they're setting everyone up for the AI, and I believe that they feel they can control the health in part because they're expecting everyone they're dealing with eventually, probably in the not-too-distant future, to be the transhuman, the 2.0. So they feel they can control health by other methods. And I don't think my profession is long for this world.
Well,
as a human profession.
In a industrial society, it's more than likely we'll have less doctors and more robots doing health, just like in Star Wars. Remember when Luke lost his hand?
I do. And I also remember who delivered Leia's babies.
Yes, a robot. And we're not saying George Lucas knew all this stuff and whatever. Listen, a lot of filmmakers are introduced concepts from the 20s and 30s by sci-fi writers that were in think tanks that put out a lot of stories. The reason why it seems like they were prophesying the future is because they had information to put in their stories. And then so that form of literature, entertainment, influenced others, right? When we were looking at Star Wars and other programs with androids and whatnot, we didn't think anything of it. It was cool,
it was entertainment. It was just cool and entertainment.
Yeah.
What interesting ideas.
Yeah, so now that we're in this age of information that the Bible talked about in Daniel, well, knowledge will increase. People have different variations on what they believe about that, but I believe it's the knowledge that we have now. It has exploded, and we're now seeing things that tie so many issues together within entertainment and other industries, right? And so
Absolutely.
we see the robot delivering the baby. What are we seeing today? They have robots just like that. They have artificial wombs. And other things that we could talk about in another program. And that'll be fascinating to talk about that stuff with you because of your medical aspect. When it comes to some of the stuff me and you talk about privately, it awakens me to a better understanding to how the body works. And then I connect it with another thought. I'm like, hey, well, wow, look at this. That's why they could do this with the sheep. That's why they could do this with the goat or the cow or whatever, because since we have similar functions, remember, we don't believe in evolution here, but we have similar functions. A heart is in a cow, isn't it? Right? So
Absolutely.
God created some similarities within the species. Let's put it that way, right?
Without a doubt, but that's the one point I wanted to make quick. Mm-hmm. No matter what it is they are trying to come up with, remember, they're always patterning after what God has already created.
Absolutely.
And they will never be able to do what God has already created.
Right. It's a perversion. Perversion, right? And that's the only thing Satan is good at.
Never greater, but that is their big theme.
Right.
Oh, we can do better, and we can make it better, and we can get rid of all your diseases. Well, they've caused half of our diseases.
Right.
There are other reasons for our problems with diseases.
Yeah.
But still, so they're constantly saying we're going to make your life better and better. But really, what they're doing is taking away the autonomy for the sake of the
hive mind, the technocracy.
Yeah, the technocracy that they plan on. Mm-hmm. If I could just tell you a 2-second story. So back a couple of years ago, as I was starting to try to understand the changes that I started seeing after I'd been saved and started seeing the big changes that were going on with a mutual friend of ours who was teaching me a lot about what the elite, what we will call for the moment the elites or the New World Order were doing, I decided to start trying to figure out, so is this communism? And after I kind of punched in, so to speak, the different qualities and characteristics I was seeing, exactly what you said, technocracy is what I came up with, as I didn't even heard the word before. Technocracy is exactly what the formula pointed to.
Right. And for just to reiterate the point, don't think just because the word tech is in technocracy that it's just about the tech. It's a scientific dictatorship. Scientific dictatorship.
And scientists know better. That is their premise.
Yes, but which leads us into scientism, which they pretty much worship science and evolution and all these things in one. Another conversation. But to go along with what you were saying prior, so people can understand where things are going leading up to the 7-year tribulation, and we don't know how far that's off or whatever, but it's going to lead there. We have this thing hanging over America, and it will boil down into the medical industry. Central bank digital currency, CBDC. When you hear that term, all it really means is financial slavery. Simple as that. Because they will be able to tell everything that you're doing. You won't be able to use cash anymore. They'll probably do something like this. Well, we've had our system built, and we know that you're using cash. You'll have 30 days to get the rest of your cash in the bank. After those 30 days, you cannot use cash anymore. And so what you won't be able to do is go and barter as far as cash is concerned. You won't be able to buy on the black market, whatever it is, okay? Because not everything on the black market is bad, all right? You won't be able to use your currency like you used to. And so boiling that into the universal basic income, which could be, say, $1,500 a month, for whatever individuals. Could be 3,000, doesn't matter.
Who knows what criteria
Yeah.
they're going to use to make these decisions.
Right.
Education, job, need for a job. They may say this job is needed more this year than next year, or vice versa, and say, oh, guess what? Your points went down or up. Your salary's going down or
Right.
up.
Yeah.
It's also potentially arbitrary.
Yeah, you talk against the state. Oh.
And then there's all the penalties. Yeah, exactly.
And if you don't know about this, people, check out what's going on in China. It's already established there, and people are suffering. If they talk against the state or whatever the thing is, right? They can't take a taxi, can't plan a plane flight, and other things. And one more.
It's instantaneous too.
Yes, instantaneous.
I heard a story about a guy who was crossing the street in the wrong place where he wasn't supposed to be, a jaywalking type of idea. Then found out that minutes later he went into a store or something like that, and he looked at whatever his cell phone said, and they pointed out that he was seen doing this thing he wasn't supposed to be doing, and his rating went down, and they took money out of his account.
Just like that.
Or points, whatever they call it over there. I don't know if they call it points or monies or whatever.
Digital currency.
Yeah.
And so it could also go into this idea of the climate change, which the climate changes every second of the day. So it's a big hoax to lead you into this sort of thing with the monetary and the taxes and whatnot. And one thing we found out is that if you say, for instance, they say you can't eat meat, or you can, but you're limited to a certain amount, and you say you're overweight, obese, or whatever, and you go on the scale and it says you gained a pound, you lose points. And they'll stop you from buying something in the store that's pertaining to that.
And have you noticed that the simple carbohydrates prices have gone through the roof? I am a M&M lover, and the price has almost out of nowhere tripled.
Yes.
To buy a bag of M&Ms.
Yes.
And I have had to alter how many M&Ms I can buy because I can't afford paying 3 times that amount. And that is what their intention is, not only for your pocketbook, but also for training you.
Yes.
If I could say 2 seconds real quick, and that is that all you just described, I didn't realize till we're sitting here talking. They've done it already in medicine. They've taken away the ability to use cash in medicine for the most part. I can't because I don't work for myself. I personally do now. I opened my own practice. But for 95% of the medical providers, because they work for a system, they can't reduce the price for their uncle or their friend or give them free care. There's no way to be able to do that. They watch all of the codes, so I can't put a different diagnosis, can't do a different procedure. The computer system is the medical electronic record is totally available to the insurance companies. They have the right to go in them anytime they want to. So I'm already living medically in a technocracy, I guess as well, what the future of the digital currency will be like.
Yeah.
No longer do I have any autonomy.
Right. That's crazy.
And in that system, I shouldn't use the word I. I'm out of that system now. But when I was in it, that's how it was.
Yeah. And it's kind of bleeding into your practice, what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that my practice is cash.
Okay.
I have reduced my prices as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Charging 50% or less what other people charging cash are charging, medical providers,
Right.
to try and find some fairness in this system.
Yeah.
But I will also tell you bring up a point. I have run into more and more patients who are saying they've lost their medical providers because they've quit the system and are trying to go on their own into cash, trying to do something called concierge medicine. What I know as concierge medicine is a very different thing than what they're calling it now.
Okay.
But without getting into it, the bottom line is people are trying to go to cash because they can't survive. And by the way, it also brings up one other point to round out that other conversation. So why is another aspect of why the care is so diminished is because in order to keep your job, you're forced to see a certain number of patients in a certain period of time. Otherwise, you will not maintain your job at these different places. So if I have to see 40 people in a day versus 20, clearly the quality of care, the attention I pay is going to be less. And that is, generally speaking, I don't even want to say generally, I would say with 90% certainty, that completely takes away the quality of care that the providers can give people. because every aspect of what they're doing is being monitored, including being forced to see larger number of patients or not keep your job.
Right. And you know,
And that's not an exaggeration, Chris. That is the truth.
Yeah. And
Straightforward.
And it doesn't make it better since we have these people in the industry that are just not good. You know, it doesn't matter if it's in the heart surgery or in the pet. We were talking about it earlier, and I just say this short thing where I took my little animal. I call my little animal, my little rat.
Lincoln, the good man.
My little Lincoln. He's a dog, right? And I took him to see about something that was going on in his bladder, and they said we need to do surgery because if he pees out these tiny shards in his bladder, he can die, right? So they tried to use the scare tactic on me, right? And so I said, you know what? I can't afford this right now. $3,000? $3,000? Are you serious, right? And so the medical professional went back and said, I'll be back to you in 5 minutes. And I figured that the price is going to come down, but maybe $500 or something. They said, now we can do it for $1,500. I said, wow, no, I'm not doing the surgery. I felt like you feel like I'm stupid, you know?
Well, in a way, stupid isn't the right word. Unaware of the parameters because it's not your area of expertise.
Right.
It's not your profession, and there are people who are absolutely taking advantage of that. I was thinking as you were talking. So I think what we're left with in several of these situations, whether you talk about the military, you talk about the police, you talk about the medical field, you get either the people who are left who are of lesser quality in terms of wanting to give good care to people, and they're sticking in there only because it's the best way they can make money. Or you also have people who actually are extremely sincere in wanting to help, and they're constantly fighting the system, which was me up until a certain point. Constantly fighting the system. Those people fighting the system eventually I think are going to be pushed out because I think we're going to go to AI.
Yes.
The AI is coming in, and the mechanism is through the transhuman point too. But so all your medical professionals, there are I don't know what percentage, there are many with good hearts and good intentions, but so I'm not trashing them all by any means. Right, yeah. But different people respond different ways to the pressure.
Yeah, the rotten apples are there. Is the point, right?
They are there. Yeah. Yes.
And so with that situation, I didn't do the surgery. I felt like somebody just missed out on getting a payment for a Porsche or something. But
well, plus you want your pup to do well.
Yeah.
And you were how can you trust them with that situation when that happens to you?
And I've heard of people that have actually even went along with the surgery, and the pup, not that particular surgery, it was something dealing with cancer, I believe, and the pup died the same week anyway. You know? Yeah. So, and that's just a quick side note for you guys. So let's go 10 more minutes and round this conversation off. We just mentioned AI, and at our church, Sunrise Bible Church in Henderson, Nevada, we did a total long study on artificial intelligence leading up to the 7-year tribulation. And I'm telling you, we probably have to do, you're going to have you on a regular, dude, because what we saw, and this was at least 4 years ago, at least that, was the entire medical system already being trained to use artificial intelligence in every level. So we're already behind the curve.
When you say the entire medical, did you say community?
Community.
All right. Are you saying that you feel that there are doctors, not the average doctor working out there now, but a group that are sort of have knowledge that they're not using yet? Or you just think that it's a progressive
It's something that's
it's a progressive getting ready to use the artificial intelligence.
Right. They're slowly rolling it out.
Yes,
but the whole how can I say it? Blueprint is there already.
Definitely I see that. And a simple example of that is the robotic surgeries.
Yeah.
You have people who are just really skilled at doing the robotic surgery and do a much better job of it than others. Yeah. Those ones are going to rise to the surface of hopefully of being the busier surgeons, and we see with radiologists a lot more of them doing procedures with relation to actively seeing the probes go in, do things, put in sutures, put in stents, that type of thing, where we can see what's going on in the fluoroscopy and the digital radiology type things. So I know that those people are already on their way there.
Yeah.
I don't see as many of the general practitioners being asked to be prepared to use the AI, though.
Let's frame it a different way. The blueprint is there, right?
Oh, I'm sure that's true. Yes.
They're slowly rolling it out. But in the more industrialized parts of the medical industry, this is not just America either.
Oh, okay, I see.
So say for instance, say you're still in that system, and I come to you. Actually, I might not even come to you. I might come to a computer, a kiosk.
Yes, that's what they're pushing,
and
that's what Dr. Google is. The beginning of.
There you go. And the AI. This is already there.
Not one of my partners, by the way. Dr. Google's not one of my partners. Okay.
The AI might say, "Hey, well, we have your medical records, and according to your blood test, what we just got, the outcomes, we're going to prescribe you this, and that."
Without a doubt.
And the parameters, there's always a room for error. Always, right?
Oh, yes.
And so what if this AI gives me something that not necessarily purposefully kill me, but something that could harm me in the long run? But I would know because I trust the AI. I trust where it's coming from, the intentions.
Yeah. So you're getting into that realm of, so who's better? Who's better? Are the humanistic attributes of the physician still going to supersede what we're perceiving now, what we're thinking about now, are the colder, more concrete, factual, but far-ranging brain of the AI to know all the different I don't know all the different medications. There are new ones I don't know. There are ones that probably have never been used. I'm not an oncologist, for example. There are many oncological medications I don't know as an emergency room physician. Yeah. So I know about a lot. I know about the different families. I'm always learning new. But where that brain in the AI computer, or if they put it into a human form and make it look like a human when it talks to you, that's possible. But there are many aspects of facial expression and all that type of thing that I use to help me figure out how to care for people. Yeah. And all of that is going to be lost. And that interaction between the patient, the person to person, one happening to be a medical provider and one happening to be the patient, that's all going to be lost too. But I'm not sure, but they're promoting it as it's still better because doctors make mistakes. Yeah. And your point is, but AI can make mistakes too because they're not taking all the information in. Then it brings me to another quick comment, and that is, I honestly believe the Holy Spirit helps me to care for my patients. I doubt that the AI is indwelling the AI, whatever it is.
Well, that's two different conversations.
But you're with me on that, right?
I'm right there with you.
I used to call it intuition. Now I know better. Now that I'm saved. But it's I function on that too. That's a part of how I care for people.
Yeah. Because this artificial world, we just have to frame things in a certain way so we could think better. We could think deeper.
Okay.
We're building an artificial world.
Yes.
Right? Off of what God created, right? And it's not all evil. However, the system that's coming is evil. Right?
The intentions are absolutely evil.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we have people in the tech industry and where they don't know what they don't have a biblical mind frame unless they're saved and they know Bible prophecy. That's two different things right there too, because a lot of saved people don't know Bible prophecy, and some don't believe in rapture, some don't believe there's going to be a 7-year tribulation, some believes that right now we're just waiting on Christ and we do nothing. It's all so many different caveats.
Yes.
But I want to go back to the point where you were talking about the personalities, right? And so as we're talking right now, they're building robots and AI personalities that are going to flawlessly mimic human personalities, including the inflections, including concern and love and what all these human attributes.
And not a surprise, right? Because Satan is always trying to mimic what God has perfected.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So, guys.
But whether they'll accomplish, how well they'll accomplish it is the...
Right. I have to say this. If you're still with us, I don't believe that the larger plan of Satan is going to be totally realized, because God tells of how when we're not dealing with Satan's wrath in the 7-year tribulation, we're dealing with God's wrath, something very important to distinguish. It's not about Satan's wrath, okay? And I know that Revelation 12 talks about Satan getting kicked out of heaven and him coming down with great wrath, but that wrath is towards the Jewish people, okay? He already hates humanity as on a whole. We bear the image of God, and that's another theological argument. So he talks about the 7-year tribulation. If you want to study Bible prophecy, go to the book of Daniel, go to the book of Ezekiel, Isaiah. There's other tidbits all over the Old Testament. Of course, the book of Revelation, and there's so many different things in the New Testament. So it's a big study. However, if you get a hold of this, you'll understand what the 7-year tribulation is actually about. So we jump to Revelation 13, and we see the rise of the beast and the false prophet. And the question I like to ask my audience is, who is the one that releases the mark of the beast in the middle of the tribulation? I'm not going to put you on the spot, Mick, but you need to go and study that, Revelation 13, because most people are going to say it's the Antichrist. That is not correct. Go and read Revelation 13 slowly. Who is the one that releases the mark of the beast on the behalf of the Antichrist? Right? And so we have the peace agreement with Israel signed. The rapture happens before that. Then we have the 7-year tribulation started. It's God's wrath pouring out on mankind, and he's leading... God is getting his wife, not his bride. We're the bride of Christ, the church. God's wife, Israel, is going to finally acknowledge Jesus as the Savior in all of this revelation, right? The revelation of Jesus Christ. The wrath of God is pouring out, okay? And so what the system that's being built right now, many people don't know where it's leading to, you know? But a lot of people think this is all altruistic and we're going to help humanity and whatnot through their religious eyes or whatever the eye is. They care for humanity.
Unfortunately,
right?
That's the big deception.
Right. And so when whatever happens after the rapture, whether a UFO shows up or whatever, the world is going to be galvanized in this thing like we need to come together. We could do it as humanity. This humanistic idea without an outside force, we can do it, right? And so the system, whether it's the medical system, the political system, the religious system, the economical system, all is going to be galvanized into one idea. And we see a political leader rise up on the scene, alive, of course, before the 7-year tribulation. He signs a peace treaty, boom, it starts. And then the wrath of God is pouring out the whole time. Then we have what's called the Great Tribulation, where things get worse, and billions of people die, but a lot of people get converted to Christianity. And when we say Christianity, we mean biblical Christianity being born again into the kingdom of God, putting trust in Jesus Christ alone. So what we're talking about today is leading towards that time, whether it be 10 years from now or 30 years from now. None of us knows. But when the rapture happens, everyone is going to know. Okay? And so I just wanted to say that to kind of give us a frame of thought. Because when we talk about some of these things, people aren't thinking about Bible prophecy. They're not thinking about, not all. We have our believers that believe that, but it's a big portion of people that's not going to think like that.
Yes, Chris, before I was saved, I didn't think about that. And now that I am saved, and the more I learn about the medical establishment that has had a hold on me for 33 years, I find it hard not to think about the Bible and biblical prophecy and Jesus and being saved. It's a part of my practice every day because I rely so much on that, having been saved, and also recognizing how much satanic thought process there is in the system which has had a hold on me before, the higher levels of the medical system.
Right. And just another final thought. If you're listening and you're like, you might even be a Christian, and you're like, why do we even have to talk about this stuff? This is reality, okay? And the part left out of a lot of very intellectual conversations when it comes to diet and whatever, and I understand a lot of these people aren't saved, is the spiritual realm.
Without a doubt. I've heard people say many times before that Satan has gotten this world to think that politics and religion, and I hesitate to use the word religion when speaking in terms of Christianity because it's not necessarily the right word,
right.
But to make the process, the comment easier, I've heard so many times politics, science has nothing to do with religion. If you read through the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, politics is everywhere. Everywhere.
From the beginning.
And if you have a knowledge, of which I'm especially a fan of Chuck Mishler for this, and his ability to be able to point out the science in the Bible and how present-day science, physics, astronomy are pointed to in the Bible. It's fascinating. So it's all over the Bible. So the Bible is not a separate quote-unquote religious book.
Right. And this was a good conversation, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button wherever you are, whether it's Rumble or YouTube or whatever. I want to thank Dr. Mick for joining me here.
It was my pleasure, and God bless you all, and I hope that you will all go to the Bible to continue learning, and maybe some of you will be saved as a result of all the wonderful things that Don't Let Them Burn does.
Thank you.
And I wasn't even paid to say that. I just believe it in my heart.
It's all.
I'm not paid anyway, but
it's all God's work. I'm just the messenger, and God has just done some awesome things in both of our lives. And
amen.
We just want to say, if you're not saved and you're listening to this program, no matter what you've done, no matter what you have done, Jesus Christ loves you. Now, the Bible says that God is angry at the wicked every day. You don't have to be in that category. You can become a friend of God through Jesus Christ, who died on the cross and resurrected on the third day. He did that for the whole world, not just for some special people, for the whole world. And so he's showing his love for you through his creation, through his Bible, through his prompting. And if you continue to reject him, there's a place that's not comfortable. It's called hell. Heaven is not just a final destination. It's a place where we go, but we get to come back to earth. There's something called the Millennium Kingdom. There's something called the eternity, the new heavens and new earth. You want to experience all that. We don't want you to be in a place of torment along with...
For eternity.
For eternity.
Eternity
exactly.
is for everyone. It's a matter of
right.
where you are, if
location,
I understand correctly, Chris, right?
Yep, location. And we don't want you suffering for eternity. It's just awful, okay? So we just want you to understand the gospel of Jesus Christ and cry out to Jesus today. Ask him, hey, say if you're real, prove it to me. And he will.
Please.
And it's so, the funny thing is that becoming a Christian is the easiest thing to do. Just belief. That's it.
Absolutely.
Now, when I say belief, I don't mean, you are repenting in the sense of your eyes are not open that you are a sinner and there's only one Savior, and that's Jesus Christ, okay? And the devil blinds the mind so much that we reject. The depth of sin is so deep. There's sins I can't even mention because they're so awful, what they do to kids and whatever. But whatever you've done, Jesus can forgive you of that. And you can be born again. You must be born again. And with that, we end out this segment of Amazing Machinations. Don'tLetThemBurn.com. Christians, if you're hearing this, preach the gospel and don't let them burn. If you like our videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get all our frequent updates.